changed it. But for me, the role of government, personally as well as in the Constitution, the role of government is very limited. The role of government is to protect our freedoms. It's not any more complicated. Just protect our freedoms. Let me keep what we're in, keep the incentives there. And yet today, it's totally out of control. If you read the Constitution carefully, the Constitution is mostly prohibitions. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. Article 1, Section 8 says what you can do, and they stuck on Amendment number 9 and 10 to make sure that the government wouldn't be doing all these things. And yet, if you wanted government and you want government to be involved, you know, it goes back to the states. But unfortunately, we have lost that. We're in many ways, in a constitutional crisis because the Constitution has so little meaning. There's not much meaning there. And it started off with things like, in the 50s, our government started getting involved in public education. Always for good reasons, you know, do this and that, and raise the quality of care in all the states, and everybody have equally good education. Now we have equally bad education as a result. So on that instance, I used to say they shouldn't be there, but if you come down with that conclusion, then there's no need for the Department of Education. They shouldn't have it. And we could save a couple of dollars there. Well, if you accept the notion, which, you know, generally speaking, the Congress accepts it, there's no more effort, as there was when Ronald Reagan ran for the presidency in the 80s, to get rid of it. Nothing happened. We didn't. But if we are complacent, or if we accept that notion, then the big mistake is that it happened without amending the Constitution. If gold and silver still is legal tender under the Constitution, but now they say Federal Reserve notes are illegal tender, and if you use gold and silver, you go to prison, that means they ignore the Constitution. If they aren't protecting our civil liberties and our privacy, and they're protecting only government secrecy, and they have agencies of government like BATF and the Homeland Security and the TSA agents violating our liberties all the time, if we allow it to happen, then we've allowed the Constitution to be changed in an improper manner. And therefore, what we have left is not all that great. I mean, there's so little respect and really little understanding, because we've endured, you know, probably 70 or 80 years of an educational system that taught everybody to understand the Constitution in a different fashion. And that is, the General Welfare Clause means you can endorse the whole welfare state. Oh, the Interstate Commerce Clause means that you can regulate every single product ever made and let the federal government control it. Just think of Boeing. Thinking, you know, they've been billions of dollars on a new plant in South Carolina. The Interstate Commerce Clause was originally written to make sure that you can have interstate commerce, a free trade zone, so to speak. So they spent $2 billion down there, and because the unions didn't want it, and that the president writes an executive order and prohibits it. Now that's what should be unconstitutional. You should be held accountable for that. So it is respect for the Constitution that is so vital. Now, I think it was probably the greatest document written for a country and a people, but it was not perfect, and that's why the founders allowed us to amend it. But we're in a crisis now because we do way too much, even on foreign policy. There's no authority in there to say that we're supposed to be the policemen of the world, that we're supposed to be involved in entangling alliances. And you know, we're involved in too many entangling alliances. For instance, I would like to get out of the entangling alliance of the United Nations. The IMF, the World Bank, the WTO, and NAFTA and CAFTA, and all the rest. Why don't we defend the sovereignty of this country and set an example for the world? People sometimes will accuse me of saying, well, you don't like to go over there and interfere and tell other people what to do. That means you're an isolationist. Well, it's not the case. I want to have trade and travel and visit with people and be friends with people, which is quite a bit different. But if we accept this idea that the government should always be doing this and running things, let me tell you, we're not going to have much left. We're not going to have free trade. We're not going to have a productive economy. We're not going to have sound money. And it's basically the fact that we haven't followed the Constitution. So if you can agree that we got into this mess because we don't respect the rule of law, I'd like to make a simple suggestion. Why don't we have only people, not only in the Congress, but in the White House that truly believe and will enforce the Constitution? There is no authority for us to be involved in wars around the world. You say, oh, well, we have to do it for our national defense. Well, if it's for our national defense, the founders thought about this. First, they said, under attack, even in those days it was more important because the Congress wouldn't be in session. If our country is under attack, the president does have an obvious responsibility to do something. But then immediately, if it's a prolonged battle going on and you want to have a war, it's Congress that makes the decision. It's the people to make the decision. In that way, only Congress can declare the wars. Today we're in, I imagine, about 5 different wars, and they're ongoing. And even though they might make you think, or would like you to believe, that the Iraqi war is over and there was a wonderful victory in Afghanistan, I think most people know we've been there 10 years and there's not much of a victory. But we're in Pakistan, we're in Somalia, we're in Yemen, and we're very much involved in Libya, and our CIA is involved in Egypt. We're involved all over the places. We're in 130 countries. We have over 900 bases, and we're going broke. And they say, oh, well, we're getting ready to leave. Do you think the people in charge right now are ready to leave Iraq and Afghanistan, even though they tell us that? They're building huge bases over there. We built an embassy in Baghdad. It's bigger than the Vatican. It cost $1 billion. I would suggest it would have been much better to spend that $1 billion back here at home is what we need. My position on foreign policy obviously has economic ramifications, and that is, if you don't fight wars that are undeclared, there's not very many wars are going to be fought if I'm president, I'll tell you what. And the president does have authority to move the troops. There's some things I'd be very, very cautious to make sure that Congress acts responsibly, put pressure on them to do it. But when it comes to troop movements, the president has the authority to move the troops. It's no declared war. So guess what I would do? I would bring the troops home. Yeah. Somebody asked me the other day on TV, how long would that take? I said, as soon as we could get the ships there, we would come home. But just think of what would happen, even without, you don't put everybody out of the military, but what you do is you bring them home. Just think how many dollars would be spent here. Germany likes us over there because we spend millions and millions of dollars, and over the years, billions of dollars. So we have troops there, we have them in the Middle East, we're in Japan, we're in South Korea, and we incessantly spend all this money overseas. And if I thought for a minute that it would make us weaker, I would reconsider it. But I am convinced that us meddling and being in so many places contributes to our bankruptcy and actually weakens our national defense. So therefore, there's a